Now let's begin in Geneva, where a research document prepared for the European Peace Facility, an EU project that supports peace operations across the world, has just been released. The paper reveals that between 2015 and 2020, insurgent groups operating in the Lake Chad Basin launched at least 500 attacks on military bases and troop formations of the Multinational Joint Task Force, or MNJTF, in the region. The study on the Lake Chad Basin region was put together by the Safeguarding Security Sector Stockpiles Initiative based in Switzerland and published with the International Peace Information Service. And it alleges that lethal weapons, including small and light arms seized from military bases during attacks by insurgents, sustained the 12-year insurgency in Nigeria and the Lake Chad region. Well, for more on this, I'm joined now from Geneva by the chief author of that report, Eric Berman. Eric, thanks very much indeed for joining us. We appreciate the time that you've taken, given your rather busy schedule. But briefly sum up the findings of your report for us. What are the main points?
Thank you very much for having me today. My guess is that you and your audience may understandably assume that governments and their security forces do everything they can to ensure that the military equipment that they deploy with in the peace operations is secured and accounted for, so that it's not diverted into non-state armed groups' arsenals. Certainly, I assumed as much when I started looking into this issue some 10 years ago. But surprisingly and worryingly, facts suggest otherwise, that this assumption too often is without merit. And much more could be done and needs to be done to help ensure that the weapon systems procured to support peace operations remain with the uniformed personnel to protect civilians and protect themselves, and don't end up in the hands of militants to undermine human security and to attack the peacekeepers. You mentioned the 500 attacks that have occurred in the Lake Chad Basin region. It's against the MNJTF, the Multinational Joint Task Force that you mentioned, and those uniformed personnel serving alongside it. And what has occurred in other instances is that millions of rounds of ammunition have been seized, thousands of small arms and light weapons. But in the Lake Chad Basin region, over the period that you discussed, it's much more, it's unprecedented levels of material, of lethal material. And that includes not just the small arms and light weapons, but heavy weapon systems, armored vehicles, main battle tanks, self-propelled artillery, multiple launch rocket systems. And it's worrying not just for the sub-region, but for the larger region as well.
Well, absolutely. I mean, it is very worrying. But, I mean, overrunning military bases essentially is netting the militants a huge bounty. And we're not just talking about small arms, as you said, but a wide range of weapons systems with which they've been able to sustain themselves. I mean, how did you come across all of this information?
Well, it's not a secret. It may not be something that the governments that are participating in the MNJTF like to talk about. Some governments talk about it more openly than others. But this is all based on open source information from Nigerian press, which is robust and active in reporting, as well as the media in Cameroon and Chad and Niger. And sometimes you just need to step, back a bit to see the forest from the trees. And you have incidents in which there are really significant reporting on attacks. I remember one it was Bastille Day in July 2018 in Jilly, where it was a base operating, like a company strength, but it was over 700 men and it was overrun. And so when you piece it all together, as you said in the opening, it's easy from open sources to document more than 500 incidents of attacks on MNJTF and troops co-deployed within the mission area or perhaps outside. So in Nigeria, it would be in Adamawa, Borno, and Yobe states. And then we're talking about the far north in Cameroon and in the Lak region and in in Niger.
Right, and according to your report, I don't know if we've lost you there, Eric, but okay, there you are. According to your report, a lot of things that are seized by the militants are destroyed by the Air Force
I was finding it hard to
subsequently. I
even
mean, that fact was actually confirmed last night because I spoke to the Major General who is a spokesman for the Nigerian army. But a lot of things, a lot of this is costing quite a bit of money, and I think we lost you a bit there, Eric. I was asking that, according to your report, a lot of things that are seized by the militants are destroyed by the Air Force. So a lot of this is costing quite a bit of money, and that would obviously be of concern to anybody funding that operation.
Yeah, exactly. It's true. I've read exactly what the government has said, and I believe it to be true that there's instances in which a base is overrun and the Air Force is called in to neutralize the attackers or certainly to target the larger weapon systems. That sometimes is successful. It wouldn't be described as best practice, to have to go and destroy your own battle tanks or armored vehicles, other armored vehicles. But yes, I've heard that that's true, and that certainly calls into question how the money is invested and spent, because we're not just talking about one or two instances. This is something that, when you read the media accounts, is something that happens routinely, and the government itself says so.
Right, and according to your report, Eric, a lot of uniformed personnel go missing as well. Are they being taken prisoner or being killed or just running away or deserting or what?
Yeah, let's first just take a step back and realize the human toll. You said in your opening, we're talking about almost 2,500, mostly soldiers, that have been killed in that 2010, 2020 period. It's a significant number. This comes from the Council on Foreign Relations, I should add, and as part of their Nigeria security tracker, which I'm sure you and your audience is aware of. And about 80% of those deaths are Nigerian, which is a heavy toll. And when I started looking into this, I was looking at dead and wounded. But the more you look into it, you see that indeed there are frequent accounts of those who go missing. And some of those are eventually reunited with their units. Some of them are taken prisoner, and many of them are killed. And one of the concerns and the questions you need to ask is, what is it that accounts for folks fleeing into the bush as they do in such numbers? And we're talking sometimes dozens and sometimes hundreds of individuals that are reported missing, in quotation marks, as a result of ambushes or attacks on fixed sites.
And what did your report find is behind all this, Eric? Is it bad leadership, bad intelligence, low morale, lack of esprit de corps, corruption, some of the above, or all of the above?
All of the above. That was a very comprehensive list. You read the report thoroughly. There's an element of bad luck that occurs. As a UN official said to me some years ago, this is not a picnic. It's not a vacation area. It's peacekeeping. Missions are difficult. I should add that I started my career at the UN and was in Cambodia. As part of my research, I visited a dozen plus peace operations over the past 20 years. And peacekeeping is hard. I mean, that's why I've undertaken this, is to support peacekeeping and the troop contributing countries that participate in peacekeeping. So it's not to condemn them. But while there are times of bad luck, too often what you hear, and I was a spokesperson, so I've done this myself. You talk about it, an ambush. And if you read that there was an ambush, you feel that it was something that couldn't have been averted. But when you learn more about the specific incidents, indeed, as you said, it's often poor intelligence. It doesn't mean that people aren't smart, but it's that they're not utilizing the information or haven't obtained the information they need for the tactical or operational activity within the mission, or it could be equipment that is insufficient or doesn't work. Then you also have the issue of poor leadership, and the effect on morale is something that can't be underestimated. And I'm sure that you and your audience have read and picked up on the fact that people are deployed for 12, 24, 36 months, problems with payment, problems with food, and problems with equipment, as you mentioned.
Okay, Eric, I want to thank you very much indeed for joining us there. Eric Berman is the author of that report on the developments around the Lake Chad Basin, and he prepared it for the European Peace Facility. Thank you very much indeed. And just before we take a break, I have to mention that I spoke at length with the Major General, who is the spokesman of the Nigerian Defense Headquarters, and he insisted that the Nigerian army was winning the fight against the insurgents, and that never more so than now. And he felt that this report was completely misplaced and shouldn't have been released at this time.